Basa na guys ng ating libro. History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is 23 January 2023. Happy CNY to everyone. Pangalawang days na natin ngayon ng celebration. Yung note ko dyan guys, nakalagay back to original reading, 5th edition. So, balik na tayo dito sa 5th edition. History of the Filipino People, Part 4, the American Period. Topic number 16, Self-Government under America. Nandito na tayo sa paragraph, Factors that favored and limited Filipinization. After yan ng mga graphics and drawings guys ha. So, pag ang inyong libro is ang pinakalas na niyan is si President Marcos and First Imelda Marcos, the First Lady Imelda Marcos. Yung president namin ngayon is yung anak nila, si BBM, President BBM Bongbong Marcos. So, nandito tayo sa paragraph, Factors that favored unlimited Filipinization. Filipinization as an administrative policy of the United States was dictated by political and economic exigencies. During the first decade of the American regime, the anti-expansionists, who had organized themselves into an active anti-imperialist league, and the Democrats had been most vocal in criticizing the wide credibility gap between President McKinley's avowals of benevolent assimilation in his famous proclamation of December 1898 and the repressive policies of the military authorities in the Philippines. Furthermore, the critics of the McKinley administration denounced the wide divergence between the latter's protestations of altruism and affection for the Filipinos and the frank admission of Republican leaders that the reasons for their interest in the Philippines was, first and foremost, the welfare of the American people and the need for trade expansion. The Republicans, however, were able to prove that imperialism and the Philippine problem were not the paramount issues in the presidential elections of 1900. Even so, President McKinley, upon being re-elected, had to assure the Democrats who had accused the Republicans of denying the Filipinos the right to govern themselves that the Filipinos, as a matter of policy, would be given the opportunities to participate in the governance of Philippine affairs. The intense resistance of the Filipinos to the imposition of American sovereignty convinced the Americans that they should formulate a policy of government that would reduce such opposition. The first task of the Americans to achieve this goal was to win over the existing leadership of the country, which in 1900 was controlled by the ilustrados. The United States, it must be pointed out, had intervened in the Philippines when the Philippine Revolution was taking a more conservative coloration. When the leadership of Aguinaldo and his bunch of ignoramuses were rapidly being edged out by the ilustrados and the money elements of the Malolos Republic, these Filipinos, who by reason of intelligence, economic status, and ambition subscribed readily to the policy of Filipinization, gave the Americans invaluable service by inducing the masses to accept the sovereignty of the United States. The Federal Party's achievements in making resistance leaders and thousands of rebels, not to speak of hundreds of arms, surrender to the authorities, bespeaks of the success of the initial phase of the policy of Filipinization. Filipinization, moreover, served to mollify many Filipino nationalists who adamantly believe in complete and absolute independence from the United States. Unfortunately, such a policy, in reality, a policy of accommodation, determined the composition of the ruling class from which the country's leadership came from the rest of the present century. The uncertainty of America's tenure in the Philippines provided another reason for Filipinization. The McKinley administration assured the American people that it would take only a generation, perhaps two, before independence could be granted the Filipinos. The Democrats, on the other hand, maintained even in defeat that they favored independence within a much shorter period of time. Naturally, the divergent views of the two political parties toward the Philippine problem, upon which the security of appointments and the colonial government depended, discouraged many an American from seeking employment in the insular civil service. Economic considerations also dictated the adoption of Filipinization. Owing to the recommendations of the Sherman Commission, the civil government established in the Philippines had to be supported solely by the insular treasury. The appointment of Americans must be assured of free transportation expenses. Wow! Sana ganito. Free transportation, guys. So, tingnan mo. The appointment of Americans who must be assured of free transportation expenses as well as leave privileges would constitute a heavy burden upon the limited revenues of the Philippines. It was therefore economically expedient to employ more Filipinos who posed very few recruitment problems than Americans. There were indeed very few Americans who were interested in the Philippine government positions. The humid tropical climate of the country, as well as the great distance between the Philippines and the United States, outweighed the few advantages a prospective bureaucrat might enjoy from employment in the Philippine civil service. If at all, many Americans were lured to the Philippines by the overwhelming trade potential of the new American territory. The giant American business establishment and enterprises that sprouted in Manila and other areas soon after the capitulation of the Spaniards to invading American forces in 1898. Until the passage of retirement law in 1916, even those who already occupied positions in the government service preferred to transfer to private business because of the lack of any provisions for retirement privileges. These endorsements to Filipinization, notwithstanding the United States government saw to it that America still controlled the pivotal or strategic positions in the government, or those positions which had to do with the formulation and implementation of policy. The Governor-General remained under the control of an American who enjoyed the confidence of the President of the United States. In the 1920s, the United States President flatly rejected the demands of the Filipino leaders that the office of the Governor-General be given to a Filipino. The Department of Public Instruction, as another example, remained in American hands until the establishment of the Commonwealth government in 1935. When the Americans allowed the Filipinos to participate in the legislative process, the Congress of the United States reserved to itself the sole power and authority to nullify laws enacted by the Philippine legislature. Reorganization of municipal governments. The first local governments under American auspices were established in territories captured from the fugitive Philippine Republic. Upon orders of the military governor, municipal elections were held in these areas as early as May 1899. In January 1900, a committee composed of 2 Filipino jurists and 3 military officers was established to formulate a general plan for the reorganization of municipal governments. This plan was promulgated in March 1900 as General Orders Number 40. upon which was based a more permanent general municipal law enacted by the Philippine Commission in 1901. On January 31, 1901, in accordance with McKinley's instruction that the Filipinos be allowed to manage their own municipal governments, the Second Philippine Commission enacted the Municipal Code Act No. 82. The code placed the municipal government under three elective officials. The municipal president, vice president, and the municipal council, who were elected by qualified voters every 2 years. The law granted the right of suffrage to males who were at least 23 years old with at least 6 months legal residence in the municipality who, number 1, had held a local position in the town government prior to the American occupation, number 2, owned real property valued at 500 pesos or paid annual tax worth 30 pesos, and number 3, could read, speak, and write English or Spanish. Ito yung pinaka-requirements para pwede kang ma-elected officials. In effect, the Americans gave the right to vote to only a small group of Filipinos who had belonged to Principalia, the privileged class of 19th century Filipino-Spanish society. In the first municipal elections held after the passage of the law 1903, only 2.44% of the total national population, or 150,081 out of 6,623,804 Filipinos, qualified as electors. The high property and literacy qualification adopted by the American authorities deprived the masses of the Filipinos to right of suffrage. The Philippine Commission also reorganized provincial governments on the basis of the regular provinces or alcaldes of the Spanish regime. The Provincial Code Act No. 83, enacted by the Philippine Commission on February 6, 1901, placed the provincial government under a board composed of a governor, a treasurer, and a supervisor. Qualified Filipinos were elected to the office of governor for a term of 2 years by the municipal councils in the province. Americans, however, occupied the appointed positions of treasurer and supervisor, and being in the majority, controlled and directed the government at the provincial level. In October 1906, provincial governors led by Sergio Osmeña demanded greater autonomy for the provincial governments. The Philippine Commission passed a law in 1906, which provided for an elective Filipino third member to replace the American supervisor, thus giving the Philippines a clear majority in the board and reducing the friction between the Americans and the Filipinos, which by 1906 had become alarmingly serious. The same law provided for the popular election of the governor and the third member by all duly qualified Filipino electors. Another law passed on February 5, 1915, Act No. 2501, removed the treasurer from the board and replaced him with a vocal, who was appointed by the Governor-General and was chosen from the municipal presidents. In 1916, the Philippine Commission enacted another law which made the vocal elective, thus giving the electors of the province the opportunity to elect all 3 members of the provincial board. The treasurer, who was an American, retained his influence on financial matters by advising the provincial board on problems of taxation and expenditures. By 1916, therefore, the provincial governments had achieved complete Filipinization of its topmost personnel. Bukas na tong Filipinization, paragraph Filipinization of the national government. Bye everyone, God bless.